Welcome to Dialogue This Week. In this corner, we invite guests from in and out of Korea to talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest trends around the world. The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics officially kicks off today with its opening ceremony. Nearly 3,000 athletes from at least 91 countries across the globe will gather to participate in the 17-day-long golden race. A total of 109 gold medals will be up for grabs. Now, usually this event is a very festive one where much attention is garnered from the public regardless of age or race. But due to the worsening COVID-19 pandemic situation worldwide, it seems like the enthusiasm and attention is quite low this year. Today, we talk about the psychological, social, industrial impact of the pandemic in the sports industry and discuss what sports post-pandemic could look like. For more on this, we are joined by Chung Yong-chul, Director of Sports Coaching at graduate program at Seogang University via Skype. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Now, Professor, as I've mentioned, the Beijing Winter Olympics officially kicks off today, and athletes there have been subject to strict quarantine restrictions, and they will be enclosed in what's being called a closed-loop management system during the entire event, which means their freedom will be restricted and they're allowed zero contact with the world outside. So, Professor, how could the current conditions impact the athletes' performances?
Yes, indeed. The general policy, contact policy, could impact the performance at the Olympic Games. The impact can be positive or negative. Usually we think it's a negative, but sometimes a positive. Let me explain both. Being a part of Olympic Games has been a dream come true for a lot of athletes. This is like once-in-a-lifetime experience for those athletes. With a strict restriction in interacting with other Olympians, they would feel less excitement. And for some athletes, some disappointment even. They might not get high level of quality experience during the games. But this sounds awful, but it could be positive performance-wise going to the Olympic Games like going to the Disney World as a child. You are so excited to be there, but you are up to the most important event in your athletic life. It has been a great challenge for a lot of Olympians to maintain their composure during the games. In fact, they try hard not to be too excited in order to perform the level they already achieved. The pandemic restriction forced them to stay calm with less distraction overall, less distraction to worry about, better chance to perform well.
So, Professor Chung, what about athletes? Are the athletes impacted differently from performing live in a full stadium versus an empty stadium bearing recorded cheering sounds?
Well, there's quite different between those situations. During the pandemic, however, many athletes already experienced a situation like performing at the empty stadium. They might feel awkward in the beginning, but once they get started their competition, most athletes can handle those kind of situations pretty well. Having full crowd could be a great thing, but at Olympic level, they should be able to handle and deliver what they're supposed to deliver at the games. Most athletes knows how to concentrate in this situation and should prepare for it beforehand.
Now, the Beijing Olympics is the first international sports event to take place as scheduled since COVID-19 pandemic started to grip the world 2 years ago. And even the most recent Tokyo Olympics risked being canceled before it was held last year after being postponed for a year. So if we can look at the last 2 years in sports as organizers set out to take part in stopping the spread of a global pandemic, it seems like the whole connection of industries from sport sponsorships to broadcasting media have been impacted. And on an individual level, elite athletes have not been exempt from having their lives turned upside down by COVID-19. Well, not only changes to their training routine, but all kinds of contact with teammates became restricted, and cancellations of competitions also mean financial instability. So, Professor, how do you see this to have affected the motivation and mental health of athletes?
Greatly. I've seen many professional athletes devastated due to the changes during the pandemic era crisis. For example, I've been following the ice hockey team Ice hockey league in this region called Asian League has been canceled for 2 years. And last year, there's one professional hockey team disbanded their team, so the players had to to be on the street. This is very devastating experience for a lot of players. Maintaining motivation and the mental health could be extremely important during these days. I recommend players to focus on what they can do instead of dwelling in the past. I ask them to stick to their new routine and appreciate small victories in daily lives. Athletes are pretty resilient during the pandemic, by the way. They often find something positive during the downtimes and to be able to stay normal.
Now, Professor Chung, well, ideally, they have like two categories of sports. There's team sports and individual sports. So I want to ask, like, how is the psychological impact different for athletes for team sports and individual sports?
Team sports are like, you have another body to play, and individual sport, you have to be on your own. Usually, when you are doing your stuff by yourself, you tend to get focused a little better. You don't really get an effect from other people. So in this cases, in pandemic crisis, individual sport are a little better to perform. But once the game started, your teammate can affect you in a positive way or in a negative way. But usually in the professional level, they go hand in hand and work together to tackle this problem. So I see in the beginning, the individual sport is much better, but in the end, as a result, the team sport can do better job as well.
But what about for young athletes, Professor? I think they might have a different stance. The pandemic would have a very big impact on their lives as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, for young players, they have to develop their physically and mentally. They do need to do some kind of physical activity, not in a professional way, but in a regular basis. But with pandemic crisis, a lot of people stay inside and do not have enough exercise or activities in their daily life. So it's crucial for youngsters to play and they get certain amount of time during the day to develop as a player.
Now, Professor Chung, well, people gather at sporting events for various reasons, and one of which is the sense of unity and passion. As a director of sport coaching, what impact do prolonged restrictions on gatherings and cheering have on fans?
Well, you see, the sport has been existed and survived for a long time. I mean, from the ancient Greek to the present days, the pandemic changed many aspects of the sport and modern sport. We might not going back to where we were before, honestly. But at the same time, sport can bring back us to what we see as a normal in an abnormal world. Watching and playing sport can be a last resort to many people to at least remember what was like to be normal in the past. I think watching the Olympic Games every 4 years and watching them trying their best and excelling, that kind of give it could be the best remedy for this pandemic generation.
And Professor, the year 2022 is a year full of international sporting events, from the Beijing Winter Olympics kicking off today to the Asian Games and the World Cup. So with continued efforts from organizers to make the events happen as scheduled, what does the recovery of sports look like to you?
As long as the same intensity of the pandemic crisis going on, I don't think there's much difference outside of the sport. But inside of sport, there has been a great changes overall. I think the people have benefit more than before. I think the people to realize the sport can be an actual vehicle to maintain their ordinary lives. So I think what we can do under the circumstances, we should just keep trying and going to portray the sport as a normal day-to-day practices. And someday when the pandemic get over, we should be able to smile at the end.
So, Professor, before we let you go, do you have any message for our athletes, before for the Olympics? Any message of cheering?
Uh, well, the Olympians, I know this is your, most important time of your life. You've been trained and practiced for this moment for many, many years. This is time to shine. I hope everyone at the Olympic Games, going back to the basics and where you were and perform the level they used to play. I mean, I think this could be, even though this is unfortunate, there's a lot of mishaps and unexpected happenings, but your presence and your performance will give us some type of hope for the global pandemic era.
All right, I'm afraid we will have to wrap up at this point. Thank you so much for making time for us, Professor Chung. Let's hope the Olympic Games goes flawlessly with no massive infections. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.